Good morning. Morning. Welcome to the museum. I'd like to introduce our two speakers for our community event series, Jim Hemphill and Ellen Weaver Hartman. Mrs. Hartman is President and CEO of Hartman Public Relations based in Atlanta.
Retire.
She has more than 45 years of experience in building strategic communication campaigns for some of the world's most well-known brands like Coca-Cola, Arby's, and Kroger, to name a few. She was recently recognized by the Georgia Restaurant Association as one of 3 inductees to the Georgia Restaurant Hall of Fame. Mrs. Hartman has had an illustrious career and has won several awards for her work. Helping others through community service has been a top priority for Ellen for more than 40 years. She has served on the board of counselors for the Carter Center, as well as the board of Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving. A native of Starkville, she is a devoted mother and stepmother of 5 children, a former pilot, a marathon runner, and is currently researching her father's history as a World War II airman who was shot down over France 2 months after D-Day in 1944. Please welcome Ellen Weaver Hartman. Now let me introduce Jim Hemphill III. He is the son of Polly and James Hemphill Jr. He grew up in South Jackson, Mississippi. He is a graduate of Mississippi State University and began his career in 1968 as a football coach. He then became the principal of Starkville Middle School during the state's integration days, which became one of his most important lifetime growth experiences. In 1998, he began an independent consulting cooperative, the Victor Group Incorporated, in which he maintains ownership and works selectively today. He has served as the general manager of the Arkansas Student Loan Authority, managing all functions of the authority's student loan program. In 2006, he became the vice president of Ed American Corporation and moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. In 2010, he returned to Starkville to focus on the Victor Group. Jim and his wife, Pam, now work with existing clients of the Victor Group and will continue researching and travel to document his father's 15-month World War II prisoner of war experience. Jim and Pam share Jim's son Bo and daughter Angie. They also have 4 granddaughters, 1 great-granddaughter, and 1 great-grandson. Please welcome Jim Hemphill and Ellen Weaver Hartman.
This has really been a homecoming for me. It's so good to see so many of you that I saw years ago, and it's really almost kind of got tears in my eyes. Linda McGill, that I hadn't seen since, I don't know,
almost 64.
We've kept parties at Linda's house. It was really, I won't talk about it, but it was. And Stu, Bill Green, and just everybody. I appreciate, teachers being here. Caldwell still giving me directions. She always did.
I've got to tell you a story. When I was hired, it was in 1975, and it was August, and it was 100 degrees, and I had on stockings. And this band came up, and this little guy came out, looked like he was in the 7th grade. And I said, "Did your principal send you to pick me up?" And it was Jim.
I have no business being principal. Back to my first experience, the coaching, and then spending 3 years on the Hill at Henderson High School. Fenton Peters, one of my dearest mentors, and probably one of those, you look back through your life and you see people that had really impacts on your life, not just friends, not just people you knew, but really impacted your life. Fenton Peters impacted my life. And so, I can't tell you what a different person I I was after those 3 years than I was before. But anyway, great to be back, great to see everybody, and I think we've got a 30-minute video, so we're not going to try to take very much time. Helen, tell them a little bit more about yourself that you want to get out.
We did practice this, but he wanted me to come yesterday in person to practice, and I said, nah, I think we got it. So I'm Ellen Weaver Hartman. I'm the daughter of Joe Weaver that owned the Amoco service stations in Starkville. And my mother was Kay Weaver, and she was a teacher. I think she may have, she was over at Henderson at one point. And then she became an antique dealer. And I had a shop next to my dad's service stations. And what she's done to me is there's this cartoon that where the door of the storage unit is coming up, and the old man looks at his son and he said, "One day all this will be yours." So if y'all are into antiques, I've got antiques. So and I got a little shop in horse feathers, yeah. So, but anyway, I live in Atlanta. Got a job over there, sight unseen. I wrote a letter it was right in the height of the feminist movement, and I applied for a job of assistant editor of Presbyterian Church's magazine, Presbyterian Survey magazine, and I signed it Miss Ellen Weaver. You didn't do Miss in big cities, it was Ms. That was the thing, and so the guy hired me over the phone, and that's how I got to Atlanta. But anyway, glad to be back, and can't wait to tell you about my dad and his experience.
You know, if my memory and math is okay at this age, I wouldn't speak for either one of them. But 80 years and 12 days ago, our fathers were liberated after my father had 15 months in German prison camp. And so they had a pretty brutal time during that time. And we are really pleased to be here and talk to you about it. You know, I grew up in Jackson. A lot of people think I'm from Starkville. I love that. Starkville was my home since 1964. But I grew up in South Jackson, as I said, and the neighborhood was made up of old World War II veterans. They were like 23, 24, 25. I was 25 when my daddy was born. You know, I like to say about my neighborhood.
We'll tell our listeners.
I like to say that the neighborhood I grew up in was made up of people with VA loans, a new wife, a baby, and a dream. And they were. In 1946, they weren't the greatest generation. But over the next 10, 15, 20, 40 years, they became the greatest generation. And I'm really proud that I was one of the first generations of that generation. I was born 1 year and 2 months after my dad was liberated in my second Godot, Germany, so he got to work pretty fast. Anyway, Ellen and I are going to come over here, Ellen.
Okay.
And we're going to go through this, and we've got a little bit of a preamble to the video because the video kind of doesn't take that, it assumes you know sometimes more than you really know. So it follows, my father was in 2 different camps, and he was evacuated in 2 different camps. And evacuated means they moved him from one camp to another. And so he was moved across the Baltic, and you'll see a scene on the beach on the Baltic that is talking about my father. None of the other fathers were involved in that, so it kind of throws you out of context. The next day, I say it's going to be really bad. That's when we go to Stalag 4, which is a really bad Stalag prison that our fathers were both in. So with that, I think that we'll just, anything else we need to say before we get started?
We're going to do the slides, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before you start, I just want to make a comment. I got that pair of boots in my attic.
We thought that would kind of be a fitting way to, they marched up to 600 miles, so. People have said, Jim, how in the world you end up on a European video by a French and German audience station? And it's just kind of confusing, but Ellen's going to straighten all that out with this slide.
Okay, so, I knew nothing.
Move that,
Coat, the coat, just set it down, I'll let you do it. So I knew nothing.
I can wear this Bible.
My dad had a scar on his back and a scar on his torso right here, but we didn't talk about it. And so both my parents died, and I went, you know, darn, I didn't ask them about his war experience. So I did look up on NARA that he was in Stalag Luft 4, didn't know where it was. And the woman at the museum came up and she said, you need to read this book. Laura Edge wrote a book about her own father's war experience, and your father was in the same prison camp as this one. So I read her book, I reached out through her publisher, and I said, my daughter lives in Switzerland, how hard can it be? I'm gonna fly to Berlin, rent a car, and drive up to Poland to see if I can find this camp. And she writes, this is in 2016, can I go with you? So sight unseen, I meet her in Berlin, and we spend the next 10 days retracing the march, the death march, and going and visiting the camp. She had a few contacts that treated us like celebrities when we got there, and it was just a memorable experience. So fast forward a little bit later, I'm giving a speech at the American Legion here in Starkville, and after the speech, Jim comes up and he said, I live in Starkville, and my dad was in Stalag Luft 4. And so that's how I got to know Jim, and Laura and I were already planning another trip to go back for near the 80th anniversary of the liberation. And so we invited him to go. And then the Mighty 8th Air Force Museum, which is in Pooler, Georgia, near Savannah, contacted Laura and said, we got a guy from your dad's bomber group, and we have done a little bit of research and found out your dad's planes went down within 10 minutes of each other, and so, you know, could he go on the trip with you? So there were 4 or 5 of us that went on this trip. Now, so then Laura hired a German historian who then pitched the idea to Arte TV. That is it's like a CNN for France, Germany, Switzerland, and a few other countries. And Christine, where is she? Yes, Christine Rutten called us up and said, hey, we want to go with you on your trip. We want you to extend the trip by 20 days. We're going to set up meetings everywhere they march. We're going to set up meetings with the mayors of those little tiny villages. And then those mayors brought in their archivists, their city historians, and then they brought in witnesses, little 94 and 95-year-olds that remember the liberation in Gudo, or remember planes crashing down when they were little girls. So it was an amazing thing. So, and they produced this video, and a documentary, and we're going to show you a 30-minute documentary today, but we do have an hour-long one that's being debuted on WWII, which is the public broadcasting station in Georgia and Atlanta, and I'm trying to get the Mississippi PBS to run it as well. And
we missed Rick Rubin saw Master of the Air. His father was in prison with our fathers, and so he calls. For some reason, he called Laura Edge, and Laura got him in our mom. So that was our 4 Creedy kids. Ellen and I Rich Rubin, and Laura Edge. And Laura Edge is our sister joined us
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
But RTTV is a educational Netflix type television station in France that is supported by the French government and the German government. And they did an excellent job in lining up our trip and everything. We're going to move on. Here are we. And that's obviously Ellen and Laura on the far right, Rich and I in the back, and this is Ellen Witt, who is Laura's sister.
And I'm wearing my dad's dog tag. And I forgot it today.
All right, this is a lot on this slide. I know it's bad, but this just kind of gives you an idea of where we were in the world. Now, Stalag 6, up there, the yellow arrows, that's way up in, it was East Prussia, in the Pomeranian region of Georgia, Germany, or that part of the world. And it was the yellow line across the Baltic. You'll see that's where they put prisoners in the hull of a ship and took them across. It was a bad deal. You'll see the red circle was our 2,000-mile trip that we made as Creedy kids following the 600-mile march that they marched on foot. The Dulag Loop is a transition camp where all of the, most all of the prisoners went the first time to get assigned to their loop, Dulag Loops. Dulag means prison and loop is airmen, so it's prisons for airmen. And so I won't stay on this very long, but the liberation site up there is important. But anyway, that was our kind of an overall.
We were the drivers too, and has anybody driven on the German Autobahn? I mean, going 110 miles an hour trying to keep up with him is just it's something else.
That was kilometers.
No, that actually is not done. This is one of the routes that the prisoners had to march. You got to realize they took off on the Black March, the Death March, on February the 2nd, 1944.
Well,
I'm sorry, February 6th to May 2nd, 1945. And it was the coldest winter on record at that point. They didn't have the right clothes. They didn't have the right, no shelter. Lots of days, lots of nights they slept on the ground in the cold, rain, or snow. It was, why any of them lived, I have no idea.
they had, they didn't get much to eat in the prison camp, and they had already lost a ton of weight. But right before the evacuation of the camp, they opened up a warehouse, and there were all the Red Cross parcels. So they hadn't been given them. So they began to grab and they stuffed their backpacks as much as they can, but they probably walked 30 miles that first
They had
day.
to throw them all down.
And they had to throw out packs of food because they couldn't carry it.
All right, here's kind of a sequence of what's going on. In the summer of 1944, Hitler was having a bad summer. The Russians were coming up through Poland. Stalag 6 was way up in the northern part of Poland as we know it today. And so they had to move the prisoners. They wanted to hold the prisoners hostage for negotiation strength at the end of the war. They also wanted to punish them. These were, in my opinion, Himmler had become ruler over the Stalags, and he had been fussing with Hitler all along that the airmen, because we've been bombing their factories and even their cities, that they weren't being treated rough enough. And so it got really bad, or it got worse after that summer. The Baltic cruise was when they forced 2,000 men into the hull of a captured Russian coal scow. It was bilge water in the bottom, diesel fuel, and they closed it all up. My father said it was the worst 72 hours of the whole 15 months. And he had dreams about that. That was one of the reasons he ended up with PTSD, I think, just that boat line. The British had mined the Baltic, our allied forces were bombing, sinking boats all over. So they were hoping that boat would be sunk. Then right up the road, when they got to the Oktibbeha train station, which is at Stalag 4, they were chained together. They and had to run up the road, and they were forced to run up the road with German youth, by Craig's Marines, young Marines, and they were stuck with bayonets, and they had dogs that sipped on.
And they were chained together.
They were chained
You
together.
gotta tell them about the Red Cross.
And so, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
When they got to the prison, they didn't even let them go in. They spent 2 days and nights, 3 days, 2 nights on the ground, and they then went through a vicious strip search before they got to enter the prison.
Now, this is not all the prisoners. My dad didn't go through this, but this is 2,000.
You know, it's been one of the big questions that why this 2,000 group of airmen were put through actually 3 of the worst atrocities that happened in the Eastern Theater during this period of time. Don't want to extend it, but
Are there statistics on how many lost their lives during that?
I'm gonna do that afterwards, because it's surprising. Yeah, actually, it's surprising. Dr. Leslie Taplin, who accompanied these men, is the reason a lot of them lived. He absolutely gave his life to these guys. They came back and had tuberculosis so bad he didn't live but about 6 or 8 months.
This is his book. He was a doctor that volunteered to go to prison camp because he knew there were 10,000 airmen, British and
He
American,
is absolutely.
and volunteered to go, and there was just a couple of doctors for 10,000 airmen with serious injuries.
What I do now, Stephen?
Should be legislative.
Oh, it's working.
Okay.
I forgot to thank Stephen Canella for putting all this together. Thank you, Stephen and Aaron, for inviting us.
It has won an award in Berlin. And Christine went to accept the award. I think the hour-long version, in which the hour-long version is in English. So I think they have German too.
You should have provided Kleenex.
I want to stop just a minute and Pam, stand up. Now, everybody and family included is going to think I forgot to introduce her earlier. I didn't. I was just waiting for a better spot. My wife Pam, all right, and we do have an English version. This is so quickly after we got back that we didn't have all the work done, but and somebody, I think, probably, Aaron, there's probably somebody in here that can endow a faster internet connection for you. Anybody that's interested in doing that, see Derek when after the meeting. This is just some really quick shots. They were leaving Stalag 4 in the middle of winter on the march. That's the picture there. That's just an example of the barracks in one of the stalags. This is period art. I think it's a wood carving or something. I always thought it was pretty neat, but it captures the expression of the Germans as they were moving the guys out, keeping them moving and that sort of thing. I think that could have been the run up the road, and a picture of the barn. That looks pretty nice right now, but you got to realize they took the animals out of those barns before the men went in, and they just slept on the floors in the commandeer and whatever. But a lot of nights, my father said they would come in with a big pot of potatoes in bowl and just throw it out on the floor. Everybody just kind of dove in. And this is we met this gentleman. I took that picture, and they were doing excavations at Stalag 4. That is an example of the chains that they were chained together with on the road.
My dad broke his leg because it was frostbitten feet. He had trouble with his feet all his life. And he broke his leg on the march, and a German guard went over to shoot him because that's what they would do if you couldn't keep up, or sometimes they would. And a Louisiana truck driver picked him up and carried him, and then 2 other guys probably had to carry their backpacks, and all of them, by the time he got home, my dad weighed 90 pounds, and you can imagine being so emaciated yourself and having to carry a 90-pound person.
You asked about treatments of POWs. The old gentleman in the meeting in Falling-Boston that was talking about 30,000 dead Russian soldiers. Well, the Russians and the Germans absolutely despised each other. They still do. And there were many, I don't know, who knows how many prisoners that the Russians killed that were German and the German killed that were Russian. But the POWs, our POWs, weren't well fed. Dr. Kaplan figured they had about 700 to 750 calories a day, and they were marching sometimes 20 kilometers during the day. And so that's why but they were fed more than those guys. Those guys, they had one objective with the Russian prisoners, and that was them dying.
Research showed that the bread they ate was 40% grass and straw.
And wood shavings.
And wood shavings.
Now, pretty interesting. There were 36,000 some odd airmen captured and in prison, and less than 2% of them died. So think about that. About 500 prisoners died in captivity. Now, in the Pacific, about 40% died. The Japanese did not recognize the Geneva Convention. The Germans loosely recognize the Geneva Convention. So we're thankful for that. We're very thankful for that. Something else I want to say, but it's gone. And here's this, the treatment was as much mental and mental stress and those kind of things, but most of our guys made through. Most of our guys made through. I don't know what I want to say. A lot of the airmen were killed because their parachutes didn't open them, whatever, and a lot of them were shot coming down by citizens with shoes as they were coming down, or they lynched them after they were on the ground. So we had a large number of airmen that their statistics went into the general overall losses in the war, and not as airmen in captivity. So that they're a lot more than 500 died, but in captivity. And one of the reasons for that was early on in the war, the prison camps were in the control of WWII, airmen, German airmen. So they had some mutual respect. Now, in the summer, as we said a while ago, in the summer of 44, when things were really going bad, Hitler's staff they exploded a bomb in one of his staff meetings, tried to kill him, and they didn't. He had executed 50 officers that escaped from Stalag 3 and the Great Escape, and he put Himmler in charge of the Stalags. Himmler was also in charge of the SS and all the political, Waffen SS, the Gestapo, and so things changed then. They all lost a lot of body weight, but most of our guys made it home if they were lucky enough to make it to the prison. So, talk just a little bit about
Well, we saw in the video that we actually found the site where their dad's plane went down, and Jim found a Remington shell. We brought those shells
50
home
caliber,
to Delta.
50 caliber shell.
We were scared we were gonna be, because they might carry them with that. But the bullets were gone.
Helen is an amazing lady. Intelligent, I'm sorry. Helen is also amazing.
I'm talking about this out.
Laura is Got you excited, didn't it? Laura's an amazing lady, author, educator. You would really enjoy
Yeah.
knowing Laura. My father, three of the atrocities, worst atrocities in the European theater of prisons was the Baltic cruise, the run up the road, and the 86-day march. He made them all. He was lucky, I guess. And this is a picture of a boat, of the Cobble Scout. I don't know if you can see it, but it was just a barge with a motor, and they closed him up in there at dark, pretty bad. That's Joe O'Donnell. He wrote these two books right here. He was a friend of my father's. He wrote personal notes to each of those books. But oh, one other thing. That's me and my father, and you're saying, how'd that happen? He still got a uniform on. My father spent 2 years in Korea after he was in World War II. So he's a real hero. And Linda McElvin knows him, but he's an amazing guy.
So I want to point out a couple of things. My father flew with the 8th Air Force and then the 9th Air Force. He was shot down and captured in Normandy 2 months after D-Day. And he missed flying for D-Day because they had found the hospital records for why he had injuries in his back. There was a shrapnel came through the airplane, and so he spent, the historian said it was a superficial wound for Joe Weaver, but he spent 38 days in the hospital for that superficial wound. He broke his ankle on the death march, and by the grace of God, he lived. Two things I want to point out over here. They were flying in formation, and they had to stay in formation even if they saw the flag up there. And this is flight 51, and it's my father's plane when they're doing the morning mission to fly over to France to bomb something. And then the same photographer was in formation next to him, and after my dad's plane was hit, this is his plane going down. And I have just found recently that the bomb bay door wouldn't open. The pilot said to the crew, bail out, you got about 60 seconds or we're gonna be over the English Channel, and that coastline is covered in mines. So bail out now, and they went to go to the bomb bay door and it was malfunctioning. So they had to knock out a window at my dad's radio station, and they jumped out. My dad, his best friend who had flown 62 missions was the 3rd airman to jump out of the airplane. And they never practiced that, by the way. They told him, wait 5 seconds, pull your ripcord. Well, Dad watched his friend come out after him, and he was just desperate trying to find his ripcord, and Dad watched him
They never practiced their parachuting because too many of them were getting hurt parachuting.
Let me tell you one other
I asked
thing.
my father, it was hard to jump out of a plane, never practiced it. No, it's on fire.
That's right, but can you imagine? All right, so this is an article that was in the Ackerman paper. Dad was born in Ackerman. Joe F. Weaver, my grandfather fought in World War I and had the Amoco station there, that's still there. The parents, his parents, my grandparents, only knew that he was missing in action and possibly a POW. And this was the first communication they had gotten from him. And he said, Happy Mother's Day, because it was May 2nd. And he said, I'm fit and fine, but he wasn't. So.
This is Rich Rubin, and Rich was Jewish. And so we went on this trip, he was a little unsure, apprehensive, but wanted to learn, and he was treated grandly as we were. And he probably knows less about his father's experience than any of our group. He just wasn't much information about it. But we found his engine.
We found his
We found
dad's
the engine
engine. Can you imagine?
From his plane.
And we proved it by the serial numbers on the engine, and it matched up with the record.
We're trying to get some funds together now to get the engine back over from one of the museums. This is the lady that was an eyewitness that his plane didn't shut down. And so it's amazing, absolutely amazing.
She was adorable.
Visit.
What's his name?
We talked about, and we were really, really happy about our parents getting liberated on May the 2nd, 1945. But you gotta remember, a lot of people, just absolutely in Eastern Europe especially, just turned over one kind of oppression to another when they became citizens of the uniform Soviet Union. And so, and even today, we made some really good friends in Poland. And, you know, I think they're concerned today some about the reunification of the Soviet Union.
Every place we went, the Germans and the Polish, but the Germans thanked us for liberating them from the Nazi regime. And we were celebrated. You talked about going to Normandy and Paris. You're celebrated. The American airmen and their relatives are celebrated.
You can't imagine what was happening as the Russians came to Germany as they were winning that part of the war. It was really, really hard. The German people were marching with our parents to just try to get away from the Russians, and they were trying to go west. So it was because we've gone through and talked to these folks and tried to think through it, it's hard to imagine somebody coming to your door in the morning and saying, "You gotta leave. Your house is ours now." And that happened over and over and over all the time.
Jim, what were the dates that y'all went just recently?
April,
May.
May, May 4th to 20, we were there 14 days on this.
2024, 2023, last year?
No, last year.
Oh, no, last year.
Last year.
Last year. I'm sorry. Well, we got, Christian Riton, who was our producer and director, has just been recognized by the European Commission, Berlin Commission, for excellence in developing on the tale of our prisoner of war fathers, and so we're really pleased about that. We've just developed the Creedy Foundation, and we're going to be our purpose will be to do this and let people know about the prisoners of war who are heroes. Some folks think maybe that being a hero and being a prisoner is mutually exclusive, but we don't feel that. And so, and that's our website. Any questions? Yeah, I know it's been a long morning, and I apologize. I'm sure Derek apologizes for the speed of the internet.
I'm not sure about this, but after William Holden did a movie a long time ago, 20, 30 years ago, and I think the movie was called Sonic 4. I'm not sure.
I'm definitely.
William Holden.
William Holden, okay. Well, we'll have to look at it.
It was on a Stalag. It was just fictional based on others.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but please stand up.
We're so excited to meet this guy.
My father was in the same POW camp with that.
Tell them your name.
Rufus Ward.
Thank you.
Isn't that amazing? You should have gone to church with us.
You can fill that stuff to go. Then you'll have to go with us. Well, get all of them together. Then you have they mentioned the doctor. I don't know if you remember Dr. Bogus. He was called Dr. Bogus. He was the doctor at Starland. There were 4 doctors. He was one of them. One other thing, some of y'all may remember Dr. Bogus in Columbus. Not the one made,
That's true.
old, he was one of the 4 doctors in Stahl, I believe.
That's right. My old brain just forgot to say that, but you're right, absolutely. But
I'm Canadian and joined the Royal Canadian Air Force, and Air Transport Squadron flew over some of the remaining in 1953.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Parison's area, which happens to be the first town where all the Gretzky's immigrated to in the 1930s in Ontario, Canada. I lived next door and moved into the house on the 5th of May, 1945, the day the war ended. And next door, our neighbor was a colonel from the First World War, a British immigrant who's was 75 years old more or less, but his son was in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and he was in the, we said 17 was a fictitious name for the movie, but he was in the Stalag camp that, from which the movie was made, and participated. So, yeah, he was one of the participants in all of the, I mean, they made papers. He was not one of the ones that escaped. There was only a couple dozen that escaped.
So there were 80-something escaped. 3 made it back to the UK. There were no Americans. Hitler killed 50 of them. There were no Americans, no U.S. Troops involved in that. They were all British.
And he came back and settled in his father's home, so I knew him personally for a long time, although we never talked much about this at all.
I can look out and tell you that there's no veterans of the Second World War here, but there are a lot of pre-kids. And
Yeah.
if your parents weren't involved directly in the war, they were involved here in providing, saving money and saving food and buying bonds and things. So we all should feel close. A couple of things in our travels. When we go to the museums, there will be school kids there. They won't be on a field day. They'll be on a lesson day. The teachers will be teaching. They'll be taking notes. And every Memorial Day, every little community has celebrations. Whatever day they on the end of the war, they celebrate these things. And what we realize is when the war is fought on your homeland, it's a forever war. We're losing a little bit of that. We don't spend as much time with these guys, and they were important to us, and they will be important forever.
Did your daddy talk to you about all
No.
this? No? You just learned it for yourself?
When my mother died, I knew a little bit. He finally got some treatment for his PTSD. He started making some talks to schools and churches. And so I learned a little bit. But, you know, we kick ourselves every day for that. Why didn't I ask him this when he was here? Why didn't I ask him when I could talk to him? But we did. And when my mother died, I went in the attic and started pulling all this stuff out. I started realizing, and I've been researching for 10 years, so I had a lot of stuff, but it all came together. And so it was really, really important. But they did not talk about it. The country didn't talk about it. They wanted the war to go away, and it was just something else.
If you want to know what they went through years ago when the movie The Memphis Belle came out, I went to that movie with my father. He said, I don't know who that technical advisor was. He said the combat scene, I thought I was back on my plane. Everything they showed in the combat of the Memphis Belle, he said, that was real. I saw it, that's what was there. So watch that if you want to get a feeling for what they went through.
I think it's very interesting that they were so open about this, because we were in Germany in the 80s and went to Dachau, but there was no way to find it unless somebody told you to go. So there was no.
Yeah, I found it when I was in Berlin. I would say, what if I was doing the walking tours, and they said, I said, well, tell me about the POW camps. Oh, the concentration camps. And I went, no, the prisoners of war for the Allied soldiers. Would tell us about that, and the tour guides didn't know anything.
There were no
So-
tour guides.
We went to, Buchan Wall,
Yeah,
to
Buchenwald,
Buchan Wall.
which is a.
And it wasn't a
nice-
killing camp, but it was a war camp, and lots and lots of them died, and about 40 airmen were imprisoned in Buchan Wall, and they all lived. They all lived.
I have a book called Nazis in America. There's a prisoner of war from most of North Africa. And, the commander, there were several of these camps, actually one in Allentown, Alabama, but there were several of these camps scattered throughout the United States.
Oh, yeah.
And each commander of each camp went to extreme measures to determine they would be treated according to the conditions.
Yes.
They had a lot of different, experience than our fathers did. There was my father came back, he worked for the, Waterways Experience Station in, Van Winkle, like south of Jackson, or whatever, and there was a prison camp there. He took me, because we went to look at the Mississippi River model, if you don't know, and the camp was still there, the German prison, so I remember seeing it.
When we were in Stalag Luft III, which is where the officers were housed, and we saw their barracks, and there was a stove in every barrack. The beds were bad, but at least there were beds with straw mattresses. They had recipe books using the Red Cross parcels, and they had exercise stations, which underneath is where they started one of the tunnels to the Great Escape happened. But for our fathers at Stalag Luft IV, it was not like the Luft III where the officers were. I mean, they were starving.
And the treatment that
Yeah.
that the POWs got was pretty much directly proportional to the captain of the how the leadership of the prison was. And after, I call it the Himmler effect, after that summer when Hitler put Himmler in charge of these things, I don't think they put SS people in control, but they sent letters. They knew they were scared to death of Himmler, and so they became, a lot worse on the prisoners.
What was the camp that Stalag 17, the movie was made on? Was it the officers? Somehow I suspect it was.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I'm not sure about that movie.
But, I mean, there have been movies, The Great Escape was about Stalag Luft III, which was for officers.
But they didn't call it 17 in the Great Escape.
There's a 17, Stalag 17B in Volleyball.
Yeah.
Is real?
It's following Gospel, Germany.
Yeah.
It was an international camp, and they probably had 12, 15,000. It was a really, really big camp. It was very bad. It was following Gospel.
This is the book, Rufus, you need to get this book. It's called The Last Escape, not The Great Escape. And this is the only book besides Laura's and this book that we've been able to find about Stalag Luft IV, which was the airmen's camp in Poland.
It gives a really good account of the death march and what was going
Yes,
on.
yes.
Guys, I know it's.
Y'all just wanna get,
Meeting.
is there any coffee or? We'll sit around and talk for a while.
But, thank you so much.
Yes.
It's something real special. I can't expect you to say, sit down.
And it was interesting. Not much about
Wanda, did you get the names of the books? Okay.